그래서 저비리고 당아서 동아야게 내 코와랑 서기 유 녀mom바 안디나데 녀mom반 컨트롤 제가 당저 녀 강아 요야게 녀mom바데 메바스고 디스 녀mom바 셈 나섬나나 네 되자 컨트롤 가야 마리발라서 방아서 삼노 셈나나 뒤에바디레 녀mom이 디녀모시고레 디 하나가서 아신니가래 동아야 규디레스 제사당은 동아 먹어봐 인자 동아래 털고 봐 인자 동아야 얘기 규 녀mom바세고 거레스 아 녀mom바세비에 탑람텔라 나가지네 안에 컨트롤다 보시나 되네 마 쇠바콤 거레스 제사다 쇠바콤제 컨트롤용어서 마기야다 안에 지기 되니게 탑람래야 쇠바콤 거레스 제사다 쇠바콤 거인자 아니 쇠바콤 나디 내 간스 콤고레스나 다다고 하나가 저기 컨트리시게 냐마 니믹스데 되는데 요레스 컨트리 니메다 아니 쇠비게 파연디 파하고 와지네 아니 컨트리 파야 된다라 쇠바콤 고레스 지금도 디스무와다
Good evening. So, all beings want to be free of suffering and abide in lasting happiness. Despite having this wish, beings continue to experience suffering and have unwanted circumstances continuously befall us. Moreover, we will continue to suffer as long as we stay bound in these suffering realms of samsara. So, to be able to gain freedom from the suffering realms of samsara, we need to eliminate the cause for our suffering. And the cause for our suffering is our afflictions. And these afflictions, they abide on the continuum of each suffering being. Afflictions such as ignorance, anger, attachment, and so forth. It's these that cause us to suffer and create the causes for further suffering. So the very presence and the expression of the afflictions lead us to suffer and to create the causes to suffer in the future. And through their expression, we bring suffering into the lives of others. So recognizing, therefore, the need to abandon the cause of suffering, the afflictions, one strives to develop the strength of mind to eradicate them. So where we are in this, we're right at the start of the chapter on patience, and this first section of 10 or so verses is about looking at the faults of one affliction in particular, that of anger. So here in this section, we look at the faults of anger and briefly also at some benefits of patience.
nga ju kontre ki se yu jeju semba ji le ya nga ju kontre ke wa na kontre sa wa na dene ni de yang kunlong nyomo ba mari ko dene ke kunlong ta ne kontre sa wa na ane kontre ji se bi ye nga ju ke ya an jin ba dang wa dang chu jin song wa lo so ba na gon ju sum la ane chu bu fu wa cha cha wa ane ko ro ko wa lo su bi di wa ane ji kontre ji juen bi kontre ke se de ke pa jom je Last week,
in the first verse, we looked at one of the grave faults of anger, that if anger is expressed towards a bodhisattva with a motivation which would be of anger infused with ignorance, then the result of such anger is that extensive virtue that has been accumulated over an extensive period, virtue from practices of generosity, expressions of veneration towards the three jewels, as well as ethics. This virtue, this extensive amount of virtue, is overcome by the fault of anger in relation to a great being, namely a bodhisattva.
나 콘트기 교인들이 들어와 다디네 shedan dabi diva mes, seba dabi katu mes, debe seba nendendo nazo suldo komparchas.
So continuing now with the second verse, and again this is in the section of verses looking at the faults of anger. there is no non-virtue like anger. There is no fortitude like patience. Therefore, meditate on patience assiduously in a wide variety of ways.
나다 셰당 셰당 저 컨트롤 세대 지발에 나다 당봉은 저기 컨트롤 세대 가르스 기도 말아서 삼는 날이야 컨트롤 기타데 가르스 기도 세베기 당아도 심주로 지 삼다베나 당봉은 저리야 셈 이미되와 셈 마기바로 기거로 받아 이 셈 마기바데 가르스 연구를나 안에 미지기 술이야 안지 직 미년 받아와다 안에 소소를 미디비기 안지 미디베 자와지 제베나 안델에 셈 마기바 신고로와 야 소소기 대비기 되는데 파직 제네 파셔디 만년 받아 마디오바 마르반 셈 마기바 신고로와 셈 마기 이 미디와서 거든 이 미디와디 콘도기 유로 차고래 진짜 셈 마기와 지용고래 되네 셈 마기와 디기 게인체네 되네 파셔르자 균에 되바메바 배지가 마가비 남바 슈셴기다 콘트롤이 기고로 봐. 제사다 아주 콘트롤께서리 당보 진지 채워를 진균이면봐 유단 젠라마데바 어느 콘트롤께 요말 봐다 아주 당아도 수는 콘트롤께 돼 가르스 미치레 콘트롤께 봐네 미디로 콘트롤께 돼 가르스 기기리랍나 야나 미디게 수 안에 소수게 되바디 미팅비게 담로 셰베나다 넘줄 겸바이나다 안에 지게 레가로 채베네 되네 소수리아 셈마가와 기교로 이메 셈마가와 마가와 기교로 야나 미델이야 소수기 지게 레가지 코르 직 탑시다 직 라고에네 델리아 직시에네 직직직 제로제 이니로 제로제란 소수기 되바디 모두바이나 야 셈마기와자 된 셈마기와자도 되는 콜이야 미데비게 남바 콘트롤이 용거로 봐 그래서 도도 신의 삼다베나 콘트롤 계란도 기워래
Looking at the first line, there is no non-virtue like anger. So Gela first explained the very first word here, which is translated as anger. In Tibetan, there are two different words, two different common words for anger, both of which have the same meaning. So this is just what Gela said. And then as the translator, just to repeat again, that this therefore encompasses the entire range of minds. Because you'll see in the various translations you may be looking at, sometimes it's anger that's translated, or hatred, or rage is sometimes translated, as well as to softer forms of anger like frustration and annoyance. All of them are included within the term anger. So hence in my translation, I'll just use that one word. So this mind of anger, it is it's a compounded phenomenon, which means it comes about necessarily independent on causes and conditions. Without the required causes and conditions, there won't be any state of anger arising. So immediately preceding anger, or anger itself, will come from an immediately preceding mind that is, this Tibetan word would literally be unpleasant. So what it means here is a state of mental unhappiness. So it can be quite a disturbed state or not such a disturbed state. From that, it can grow into frustration, annoyance, or even up to rage and hatred. So the consciousness, the mind of anger, is preceded by a mind that is disturbed, that is unhappy. And that mental state itself comes from a preceding cause. And that, if we put it in a general sense, we can say it can come from something going against our wishes or meeting something unwanted. So so from meeting something that you do not want, something unwanted, or things going against our wishes, the mind gets frustrated, annoyed, disturbed, and anger arises. So if we take some illustrations, because if we identify the cause, then we know what to eradicate so as to not give rise to the unwanted result. So what leads to anger is a mind being disturbed, not at peace, not gentle, And that comes from things going against our wishes. So, for example, hearing unpleasant sound. So it could be a hideous sound, awful piece of music, or someone saying... And from that sound, now from that sound, now many emotions come. In your case, from the red face, we can imagine it's embarrassment. So to return to what Genla was saying, so from hearing a sound that we dislike, or someone saying something that we don't want to hear, criticizing, being rude to us, whatever it may be. So this includes things, hearing something, in this case, something going against what we'd like, or meeting something unwanted. So someone saying something may not be rude or harsh, but it's not the kind of thing we want to hear. It goes against our own views, perhaps. From this, the mind gets disturbed and anger arises. So that's an illustration of sound. So it can be a sound or speech. Then it could also be in terms of activities. So someone doing something that we dislike, or we are engaging in an activity and someone hinders us in some way. From this, the mind becomes in a disturbed state and anger arises. So therefore, we recognize that this resultant mind of anger comes from its preceding causes. So causes such as those disturb the mind and anger arises.
Jimbe tocho sena cheba ine diwa yore an pene nga nga ne siksu sheba da nga kya sheba siksu ane juin sheba la soba diwa re wa ine ni cheda da dine jene diwa chungwa re sore sheda de desole diwa chigo re cheda diwa shenda de sheda na shi ma re sheda le diwa chungwa re cheda sheda de diwa chewa re so sheda tabi diwa me so sheda na shin diwa ane lunga ngagi diwa da aje yi lu yi diwa so lunga gi diwa de sheda de diwa ma re cheda sheda de da diwa chesho re sa sheda tabi diwa me diwa sheda le shin be diwa yore be sin yorwa ine da ben sena dang de kon de sha la so ba da ma ya la so ba de so le ne diwa de chewa de na shin ma je kon do na shin diwa ane diwa de sha da yo ma re so kon na shin diwa de sha yo ma re nga ya yo ma re so siksu de yo ma re da de so le she da de diwa du ga re so da.
Looking at the first line then. There is no non-virtue like anger. So from the arisal of anger, non-virtue is going to be accumulated. It can be non-virtue solely through one's mental process, but certainly can be through if one's unhappy state is expressed in this non-virtue of speech, and it can come about through the accumulation of or engaging in physical activity. So from anger, we can create non-virtue with our body, speech, or mind. So the easiest illustration, the commonest example perhaps, is when the mind is upset. What follows is a vocal expression. One may well speak harshly towards someone else, or one may speak in a divisive manner, or even a lie to try and hurt or deceive. So in this way, from anger, non-virtue is accumulated. And of course, non-virtue, we see, again, looking at the first line, there's no non-virtue like anger. So it's fairly strong non-virtue. But of course, from anger, stronger expressions can come than these illustrations of speech. Relatively speaking, from the non-virtue that anger can lead to, speech is often not amongst the very strongest. But also then to make a point here, when it says there is no non-virtue like anger, of course, what it does not mean is that only anger leads to non-virtue. So from other afflicted minds, such as attachment, jealousy, pride, non-virtue can be accumulated. These afflictions can spur anger and the accumulation of non-virtue, or the other afflictions themselves can accumulate non-virtue. So it's not only that anger accumulates non-virtue, other afflictions too do as well. Moreover, it's not necessarily that anger is always the affliction that accrues the greatest non-virtue, but speaking in general terms, it can be understood in this way.
Sheda Nashim Main Bikimza Garesene, Kondo Savaina, Anegare, Sosu Kondo Savaina, and Tadanga Yelia, Sem Delhala, Semlia, Sem Delhala, Gawar Shubine, Kondo Sayadu, and Gaidi, Mava Sushagrua, Gaidi Scalhala, Deri, Digiti, Gaidi Mava Charugore, Mava Sugore, and the Chelia, and Lusim Devakia. Parchichi Gagor, Parchichi Gore, and Dire, and Digi gave what and Susugi, the Kondoki, Korongi, Gang Tuyagi, Gezadia Jumgore, Geza, Gang Tuyagi, Koron Tupsiji or the Chaza Jumtia Marua, Korong Tupsiji, Bene Purocine, Yatusi, Yatuska, Shin Chaza Yasa Marua. Korong Jumjas and Korong Tupsidi gave a jump 2 years, 2 years, then gave a jump to Jumgor, gave a Jumgore, and the Shetadilla. And the Shetan Guen open Susuki that he nearly guided you and similar Lucim Devachu and Koraki Lucim Deva Mevasua. And the Suzuki and the Korong Shumbi Tupsigi gave a Majumia La Sobana. And Digi Kondoski, Jebu, and Java Chima in air, and then also get Dungan Yongoya La Soba. The Nigga Dungana Sobajic, the Yongorva. And if the Kondo gave you Kondo give a rang Majiva, Shana, Neva, Shana Gamateva, Neva Jungorva, Rashiniga, Neva Jungorva, Contrugate. Now contrugate you into some talent in your.
So I've explained a bit about this first line, there is no non-virtue like anger. So again, in general, it really can be said that anger is going to accrue more non-virtue than other afflictions such as attachment. So in this way, we understand this first line, there's no non-virtue like anger. It is really, in most circumstances, quite unique in its destructive capacity. So as we saw last week, it overcomes previously accumulated virtue, and it can overcome an extensive amount of previously accumulated virtue. Moreover, because this is now again, just to say, this is in the section of looking at faults. So that's the one fault already looked at from anger. Further faults is it destroys our good mood. If we are in a good mood, and even mild anger can destroy our mood, and with strong anger can destroy the rest of our day. This we know. Moreover, anger leads to physical harm. Again, this is something we've come to recognize. It harms our body, especially if one is regularly angry. So we see there the scope of anger is really quite extensive. It harms us now, and physically and mentally, and through destroying past virtue, it limits, overcoming past virtue, it limits that virtue's capacity to benefit us in the future. Moreover, anger accumulates non-virtue, which will also harm us in the future. So in this way, we see how anger harms us both now and in lives to come. And furthermore, anger does not only harm us. Its expression brings harm to others. It harms others right now and can lead them to responding to us with anger and thereby accumulating non-virtue, and they suffer in the future due to our arousal of anger. So in this way, we come to recognize more of the faults of anger.
That is Shana Devi Diva May City Shedana Shin Diva and Desha Yomares, Desha Yomares, May said, Desha Mays. Baby girls and the Danazi, Zike, Desha said, Jitan Divare, Rodebi, Devi Desha Kevin, Divare, Digi Tevo, Tunhanyade, Chagore, in a Shedana Shimaresor. Digaresene, Zugi, Shen, Chile, Chakwe, Chapa Kevaina, Desha Kevarova. Di chapa di kihen jene ane pajo de le so kawura yunguro wada che so ge semle lamsa me magawa da di ji me wa sugme do ane chapa ji du chabe wangge she pajo de ro je pando wa yunguro wa pan도 wa yunguro ma she ko ne wa ja yong pan도 wa yunguro wa kondo ge ne ba ma pan도 wa shi me de da de sha ge 판 내가 판도가 연구를 풀을 번역을 내가 연구를 와다 내가 연구를 와 또 대사기 두신에 대사기 제신이야 대사기 안 소소히 신이야 로체바데 펜바 연구를 아니 소소히네 알람사 셈이야 마기바다 동아야 말와데 그 대사지 신의 차와기도 배지 소소히 갈라라야 돼 용수요시기로와 차비 가와르지 어디내시 연구를 안디 차바기 어디 차베 원게 인게자 현좀바 연구마 좀고마 제래 제가 좀 봐자 제가 디네 인사다 콘도나 신지 안네 되샤다 마야라서 봐요 말해야지 메세 디디스 고래 메비 김제로 직발 많이 김제들이도
So a way to understand also or to read into this first line is there is no non-virtue like anger, for example, attachment. In other words, anger is a more powerful non-virtue than attachment. So attachment, like anger, has many expressions, but it's highly unlikely it is going to have the same negative, the extent of the negative outcome from attachment is not likely to be nearly as strong as that from anger. So to be clear, attachment, it's an affliction. It leads to the accumulation of virtue and suffering. That's not being refuted here, but it is not like anger. In that, when attachment arises, the mind may well not become unhappy. We often, with attachment, engage in things that we like. So the mind is quite happy. Moreover, with the arisal of attachment and acting out under the influence of attachment is not necessarily going to bring harm to others. Anger, much more likely. And thirdly, under the influence of the mind of attachment, we may well engage in virtuous activities. We may well try to help others that we are attached to. So attachment may actually lead to the engaging in virtue. And then maybe it's the fourth one. Unlike anger, this is linking back to last week's verse. Unlike anger, attachment does not lead to the overcoming, or literally translated as the destruction of virtue, or maybe it's clearest to say the impeding the ripening of previously accumulated virtue. Attachment doesn't have that effect, but anger, as we saw last week, does.
가와기도 기셰베네 기신ing식으로 시기로와 좀다에 야구를 떠나시기로와 얘네 년버텨야 시기로와 진짜 파셔들 거부수고로와 아또 이 콘도에 기신의 직주 동계는 넘줄 두자 강연에 맞아야 말와 진짜 차배 원계 차과기에도 편히 차과 죽침부여나 차과디기 끼인지는 콜리아 기시에다 소수게 된다 두고해 고고로와다 진짜 기신ing식이야 동계 넘겨대야 될래 년버텨야 라서 와제 파셔들 셈가랑 수고로와다 되네 수세고로와 되네게 차배게 다 되네게 차과대 숙셔를 된다 말도디 되네 샤바 숙셔를 줘봤나 차과디 끼인지는 라라네 바풀라 샹라네 바라시니까 강아지에 용고로와 만니디 끼인지네 안에 콘도게 용고로와 맞아 내가 봐 차과디기 안에 지게 Geshe Shebana, Tikjambo Shea, Dongunum Guna, Yawotya, and Jig Depart, Mikosu, Kawuya, Dona, Yambatea, loss of what Denisi Jikungur, Chabi won't give Pembayatus Yungdua. Jeza Dineza. Quarter di Tigina, Zushia, Dongoina, Numgutia, and Panimata Delia, and Pa never yet Mado, Yamero, Jesandiniza, Chabanashi, Katushanashin, and Diva, and Numo, Dushatan, Ayala, so your mothers, and Ayarubine, and the Sosugi, or Court and Ayagring, I do sugaring up in your chickens out, my Yunshin chickens, and digging Ayatone, and Jalia, Rosia Yungure. And the Pendova Yungre, and Lucian Yungruva, and the Negitone, and Jika, Dusha, Condonation, Yungoma, Pendova, you want to go. Ne, you were deeper, yeah, Lucian Yungore, Lucian, Shetan de be deeper, said, Shetan, Nashin deeper, the Negio Condota, Gasode, Dusha, and a yellow of your mother's. That Shetan, Nashin deeper, Chimbo, Meva, Maribes, and the Yores, takes to Garrison. Shedadi Diva Mess, Shedan and Diva Chamber Zao in the Meva Mares, who may say Zao in the Meva Mares, may say that she and Dushala Sobana Yellows were your Mares. That the negate Dushan Condor Nashin Diva Chimbo Carrion was in a lake into your Mares, a lake into the Kuratip, Kurdip, Jamnella, Kuratip, Kurdip, Ranga Lama, Desole, and you say she had the negate, Kurdi, Big Tenzo, Teso that Diva Chimbo is or Condor Nashi.
To give further illustrations to show just how bad anger is compared to other afflictions. And again, just to be clear, all afflictions lead to accumulation of non-virtue. All afflictions need to be abandoned. So it's not to dismiss the harm that other afflictions lead to, but to emphasize the harm that attachment leads, that anger leads to. So if we take two people who have a loving relationship, say two spouses, if there is attachment between them, the way they'll speak to each other will be with gentleness, with care. And the way they will physically interact with others, they may give gifts, they'll do things to help each other. So we generally would say those two have a good relationship. Whereas if a relationship between two spouses is fueled by anger, they will speak to each other harshly. There may even be physical violence. So anger radically transforms any relationship in a negative way. And again, anger leads to extensive harm for oneself, both now and in the future, as well as bringing harm to others. Whereas attachment, it can also lead to building of good connections between people, friendships or good relationships between people. And attachment thereby also helps in leading one to be virtuous through helping others, giving gifts and so forth. So we see with afflictions such as attachment, there can be sides of it which are not entirely or not solely non-virtuous, but actually virtuous behavior can have a motivation mixed with attachment. Also pride, which is a destructive affliction, can also act in a way that leads to, is involved with good outcomes coming. For example, competitiveness. This may help encourage someone to be, say, more generous than they otherwise would be, to help others when they otherwise wouldn't, or to develop skills that they'd otherwise not. So therefore, other afflictions like attachment, like pride, can be involved with virtuous activities. Anger, not so much. Anger really stands alone in amongst the afflictions in terms of the amount of destruction it can do. All that being said, there are still some other particular cases of other afflictions that are destructive like anger can be. And again, thinking back to the verse mentioned last week, in terms of overcoming of the potential for previously accumulated virtue to ripen. Here we can think of wrong views that one holds very closely, or as acting or speaking very badly about one's spiritual teacher, having a dismissive attitude towards him, deprecating him, looking down on him about something. This then can be gravely non-virtuous too. So, and these special circumstances, they lead to karmic results not dissimilar from anger or similar to anger.
Söba nashin katupchi yomareset. Chisadang söba nashin jimbatang surum songala soda geware yine söba nashin di yomarese orda. Söbi kishi nashin yomare söba tabi katupmes. Katup sedu shengi gangale sötupadi söba nashin yomares. Döch bene jimbatang surum songwege gangale sötupadi söba na yongmares. Söba nashin yomaresedu söba tabi katupmesedu Söba nashin katub je tubchigi tubige ane döcha kasore jimbatan surumi deke yomares tinisun.
In the second line, there is no fortitude like patience. So in the years of hearing teachings, you know there are many excellent virtuous qualities that we need to develop within, such as generosity, ethical restraint, and so forth. But patience stands out as being a particularly important mind to deliver. Because if one has fortitude like patience, which means through having developed patience, one has the ability or the fortitude or the ability to undergo hardships, to bear what is difficult. This is a great quality for one to continue to develop other good qualities within.
Nene zada karche orasine ndewe seba nendendo naso tsudo kombarchas. Dine zada ngunzuge ta karsan seba sayadi bene kishe karyorasine sem kondro kiawala kondro dile cha kondro dil pa ane chige katu seba sebige kondro komba kagores. Ane kondro pa jomyada. Pa jomya. Dine ane chige rangi Shengi Nuse Shengi Sosulia Nubacheada Dinishi Gunjuche Leondu Zuba Comiodu Subiki Sem Machupa Range Sem Machupa Netu Gores Quas Yoma on the Matawa Tam Matawaje Sem Lubine to Gores Subiki and the Rang Yache Ralia Ne Nasada Denigi the Galera Capion the Galen these are Ganga Geodu as you Sabocombe Gengi, Denigi, Semlia, Yuameva, and the Ganga, Be Sem Shum Majumba, Sem Ninto Yuat Yungores. Shazadang to Che Yamne Jabala, Denigi, Che Yamne Jaba, giving Yamne Jabalaya, the Servo Commit, Gabriel, giving Yamne Jala, the Duba Media, that is Yamas made this Gileadu, the new Servo Commit, Sem Shumba, Indop Gene, Denigi Chejalia, Mavashin. She never should chat out to Goddess. She's a severe combi pain in the rest. She said that Jimbata, we don't be Sembadella, Dinasio Mares, Dinasio Servan, Servate, you got to cheat to you again, you again, Jimbana, Jimba Yomares. She said, Servala Dinis Yores, you were Dinis Yores, or never Dinis Yoba in Zadan, Julia. Sem Yomo, one of Masova, some Limbu near water, some Lingja near water, some Lingja near Banangazula, she did Gore. Gave Java Yamna Karchuna, Karchevana, Java Yahungore, and the same control on the Matan, Silver Comban, same control on the Matan, Euro, control Majavan, control Javan, and the Dejinaji Divache Machago, Jesa Control Catwood. Dine Zada, Silver to combat Bemas, Kieshimore, Dineza, Dele, Deve, not Dineza, Suela, Nende Jas, Silver the Bezu, and the Bezu, Tunjine, and a Congo.
Therefore, meditate on patience assiduously in a wide variety of ways. As has just been mentioned in the previous line, there are so many benefits to having a fortitude, attitude of fortitude, coming from patience. Therefore, one should meditate on patience assiduously in a wide variety of ways. So the third and fourth line is the outcome one comes to having reflected on the faults of anger and the great benefits of patience, whereby one recognizes that I encounter so many hardships in life and I will continue to encounter them. But if I have a fortitude in dealing with them, in particular, and not just a resilience, but a fortitude born from patience, all these hardships will not be experienced as hardships. Why? Because, as mentioned last week, the meaning of patience is it is a mind that is undisturbed in the face of hardships. Therefore, when one encounters hardships, one's mind is undisturbed. One does not therefore experience suffering or hardships or problems as such, because one's mind stays calm and undisturbed. Where this is so important is that through being able to deal with life's hardships, or to express it differently, through being able to deal with the arisal of the afflictions and prevent them from overwhelming one, a confidence grows inside, a deep inner strength that comes from recognizing, I am transforming my mind. I can do this. And the training in patience uniquely brings it in a way that is abundantly clear that things that I've encountered in the past, perhaps I'm experiencing grave pain or illness, a severe illness. In the past, I know I would have responded very differently. Right now, I'm dealing with this so well because of my training. This then will just add to one's confidence and motivation to strive in cultivating the various qualities of the path within. So whilst other good qualities such as generosity and ethical restraint are also indispensable, they do not have the same outcome as patience does in terms of giving us this confidence through the recognition that I can deal with my inner hardships, with the arisal of afflictions through encountering illness, things not going as I wish by encountering illness or other people having hardships with them. Thereby, with this confidence, one knows I can deal with life's challenges rather than in the past when I got angry and felt overwhelmed by life's hardships. Therefore, recognizing this great benefit of the fortitude that arises from patience, meditate on patience assiduously in a wide variety of ways.
Ambene ai shedan debi dikba me se de shedan khondro ke baina khondro ke bi sosu kyula ninji ke baina ya khondro ke baina khondro de ninji nyam ru ko nyam gre so ninji shen ya khondro ke baina shen ya zewa de jamba jam je ninji de nyam gre es jesa da khondro ke baina khondro de yin jin ninji ke wala ya ba che che ke gre es ninji ke shen ya khondro ke sa na shen la jam je ninji de umarwa ninji ke wala ke de dina je baina 태화침을 전주쌤 냠는 제발라 개와라 개지고 제가 되차다 현대의 얘기 니지 냠바다 니지 개와라 개지 말해서 그러다 제가 니지 콩도 개바네 니지 개와라 개제바다 니지 개바네 니지 냠바 제바 개와라 개제바 되네 태화침을 냠 제발라 바체 침보려 쓰다 디나지 디바요 말해서 내 지당에 견되는 시에 이는 쇠바다비가 같으면 세대시사다 쇠보 고미어도 태바침비 잠니죠 고미야 샘징에 된제 발아야 강아 태어도 아니 쇠보 고미도 쇠비 인도께제 쇠비 인도께 되는 쇠비게 인도께 태바침비 냠는 쇠냠는 제바야 아니 고네 표와도 지기래 대상 쇠보 고미기 진비 냠는 준주 냠는 아니 삼대 냠는 차상 공부도 딴거 두고 그래 지사도 쇠비게 되네 가도 견된데 요래서 다 콘트기 견된데 에서 쇠비 견된데 대자 만주로 거야 되다 견디 강하여 견데 먹어야 돼 당한도 거야 돼 다 연대 중요하다 디기요도 규디 고거래 지사 디요도 규디 쇠바들이 지사 쇠바디 되네서 쇠바디 배수시 아니 야네 삼다 야네 삼다 쇠바 공부를 해서 배수시네 배수에다 준비시는 공부를 해서 대배 쇠라 낸데 자세 낸데도 세티 숨으로
To summarize the verse a little, looking again at the first line, there is no non-virtue like anger. So here, a further outstanding characteristic of anger is that when anger arises, any love or compassion that we have been cultivating is immediately overwhelmed. So if we had been feeling a tenderness or closeness towards someone, or towards others in general, towards others, and then anger arises, that tenderness will be totally overwhelmed. Moreover, because of the arisal of anger, that serves as an obstacle for the generation again of love and compassion. Imagine if you're regularly angry towards a person. It's very difficult then to generate genuine love and compassion for that person. And therefore, through the obstacles that anger create for the generation of love and compassion, it becomes inconceivable that one will be able to generate bodhicitta without having cultivated patience. So if you think of the faults then of other afflictions, attachment, pride, and so forth, again, they lead to non-virtue and they need to be abandoned, but they do not create obstacles such as these to the rise of love and compassion. They do not lead to the overwhelming of one's already cultivated love and compassion and create severe impediments to the future cultivation of love and compassion. So recognizing the great harm, the outstanding harm that anger brings, one must, now the second line, look carefully at the benefits that come from cultivating patience. So if one has developed a fortitude arising from patience or based in patience, then with whatever of life's hardships and problems and difficulties one encounters, one will be able to deal with that. That will lead to a confidence. Moreover, one will see one's love and compassion growing unimpeded by anger. That too encourages one. And with this growing confidence in one's ability to transform one's mind, one's confidence in one's ethical restraint will grow because one sees one's keeping the afflictions at bay and will recognize that this is possible because one is keeping one's ethics well and will want to continue to do so. So too will your practice in patience serve to enhance your wish to continue to cultivate the good qualities of generosity because you're recognizing, I can do this. Training my mind is possible for me. It is within my capacity. So therefore, now concluding the verse, therefore, meditate on patience assiduously in a wide variety of ways. When training in patience, one should do so in a wide variety of ways. So what does a wide variety of ways in the fourth line refer to? It refers to that it's imperative that to develop qualities such as patience, one does so by using reasons and using one's intelligence. And one will come to understand a wide variety of reasons, firstly, the fault of patience, and then a wide variety of reasons for presenting how to cultivate patience, when is it needed, how to do so, and so forth. So a wide variety of reasons that one can apply in various circumstances need to be learnt and then cultivate the habituation to them. This is the meaning then of a wide variety of ways.
나도 지금 저 공부 계산대 가는 스키기도 라 삼단의 당보 공부 계획에建起 최고거래建데 가래라나 이 메대와의 연구를 해서 이 메대와의 가는 연구를 남나 다 소수게 당보 다 미션다게 수 안에 견제제 받아 수수시에 받아 안직 추제네 안에 녀버제제 이 메대와 연구를 야나 랑기 파샹이야 지게 레와제 직제도 된다는 말이 이대부 이미디어 연구로와 배낭아 저게 현실에 소속이 내가로 된다 두고야지 소속을 고야지 현실에 레와자면도 현실이 케말린 바이나 소속을 셈마기와 연구로와 셈마기와 휴체로도 파전들로 코로나야 연구로와 제산 셈마기와 이미디어와 이미디어도 야되다 이미디어와 야될 때는 컨트롤이도와 다는 이미디어와 간지 연구를 하려면도 소수게 당보 파줘들려 즉 레가로 지가나지 레와지 개변도 파줘도 맞이도 케밀레 바로와 케밀레데 가시 바래 소수게 되바데 미팅 바로와다 소수게 되바 주요 말에 소수게 되바 마주바 인자 아니 이메디아 기고래 게 김전대로와
Some of these wide variety of ways, the reasoning to base one's training in have already been mentioned, sir, to remind of what we spoke about earlier tonight, which is that anger only comes about in dependence on causes. So anger itself, this afflicted consciousness, comes from a disturbed mind or an unhappy mind. So this disturbed mind then, it too comes from causes. And these causes are very wide. We try and narrow it down into a couple of categories. So things, encountering things that we do not like, or our wishes being impeded. And this can be done through what others doing something, or saying something, or just our own thoughts about something. Most commonly, it's our own thoughts against something, or what others say or do. And the reaction, the strength of the reaction that follows within us, or the strength of the degree of magnitude to which our mind becomes unhappy or disturbed, depends on how much we wanted things to go in a particular way. How strong our attachment is to things going in a particular way or not going in a particular way. And when someone does something contrary to how we want it to be, if our want here, how we want something to be, if that want is strong, our mind is going to be greatly disturbed. If we are quite light about our wants, then our mind is going to be far less disturbed. So these then are the kinds of causes that come about, that lead to the mind being disturbed, that lead to anger arising.
아두스체네 컨트롤 용타데 된지 연구를 받아서 두스체네 다 컨트롤 용하데 유 이메데와데 이메데와데 소소게 되바데 미팅바데 되바데 마주데 되바데 미팅바야데 아니 이메데와게 나데네 되바데 미팅나 안 되바데 마주네 이메데게 고고 레베세데 게와데 가르슨 몽바 마리병에 게와데 몽바 마리병에 게와데 게고야요 말데 이네다 몽바 마리바디 원기다 이메데와데 되바마르도 몽바 마리바디 원게 이미되어게 되네 컨트롤기죠. 그래서 몽바 마리바 몽바 하모고와 님의에서 하모고와 니기 견진의 이미되어게서. 그래서 되마르나 안 바저디 케멜린 바인데 되마르는 이미되어게 고고를 배신 게 고야요 말데 이네 몽바 마리바 몽베 원기 계속 말다. 이미되어게 고래. 이미되어게 이미되어 소수게 되바 마르도 경한티 제로지 거기 멜렌데 아주 이미되어게 와 디게 고야데 가서는 몽베 원게 와 해지래 몽바 마리바디 원게 와래 컨트롤이 이미되어게 이미되어도 몽바들게 그렇죠 이미되어디 가서는 랑 되베되 마주바들게 와 디 몽베 원게 와래 다시 시유래 몽바디.
Now, because again in this fourth line it says one needs to use reasoning to cultivate patience. So looking now at even more granular detail in the sequence of events, that a sequence of causes that lead to the arisal of anger. So we have the arisal of anger preceded by this disturbed or unhappy state of mind, and preceding that is another mind that I haven't thus far mentioned, and that is a mind of confused ignorance, a mind of lack of knowing that precedes the unhappy state of mind, the disturbed state of mind, which leads to the arisal of anger. And at the beginning of the sequence is things going against our wishes, or meeting the unwanted, or things not going as we want them to. So I'm just going more granularly. Preceding the disturbed state of mind, the unhappy state of mind, is this mind of confusion, of lack of knowing.
Jeba chibigi, deba madubigi, madubna, and it jeba chibi, shed up the majibash, the chibigi, shed up majibache, and jeba mijeba in the Mombashadi, did no witness how Mombash, then the Mari, Yimedewa Gigorba. That jeba in them, me duba de Milena, I send my Givachawa, Jumzen Kayore, Jumzen Minduas, so Corona duba mena, killing Marwas. Around the women around killing Mare, Chicken, Corona came a corona development, Corona killing Mara, Chipara, Jumzen Chipara, Chazan Co Camelena, now Consa, Jumzen, the Corona Camelin could be Corona Jumze or a Corona Ganga Yure, Corona Corona di Yuko, Chipara was, Rang di Yukobana, Shin, Cola di Yukore, so Rang the Ganga Chemovan, Cola Ganga Chikugoma, Chazan. Sheba do killing by in the Cola Ganga Ted, Dungo Yure, Chesan Cola Ganga Yoba, the Dungo Yoba, Coron Dimidobaza, Coron came in Limbari, they came in Limba to call Jumzen de Demba Redua, one witness to Redua, then Sambaina, Quay came in Limba, the witness to the Jumzen, that does some tabena, send Medio Jimbarwa, send Medio Jimbar. This some Mataje. Dang edi kojema so salamsa semmedewa kendi ne kwala shagaro chesa du su gimsan ade ka ya mare kolaya ji koron za kanga thigo koron deba mebare koron de deba mebare koron koron la kanga thigo yani ji mitjigo mar chesa koron la diji ko ba jigbare kanga mogo ba jigbare ngada jigbare ba chesa ko khemelena ngaya anji gamindu asembe samda shebene imedewa yung mare imedewa yung mena ani koriki mare Korikima. Just the Niki Jeva Chibi, share up to some Dajavana, some Dajeva Chivana, Jinja, Tapnaso, Sevocom 2 years, Tapnaso, the niggas, tap the niche some Dabine, or that Corona Deva made the called Deva Mena, Nana Deva Mena killing by the Chipare, just a color ganga taking a color ganga, Chikora ganga, Google America killing him a Chipare, just some cook Melena. Ngadi quantity, Semaji Chego, Camidua, some big, do some done, Semaji or the Majibaji. Got to do, Nusavarwa, Sugorwa, Sosu, same Matiwadi, same Himidiwadi, Gigomara, Sugorwada, sure. This say on the Contra Gigomara, just do some dajene, and Dinashin that they own my Jim Mongoli, she's another soldier, Gombarja, Sidi, the Niggy some Danje, do Chebache, share a page, Danje, Dushene, and it's so Gomore, Seven, Chegore, some more than. The business of chicken, sometimes business of sugar.
So the sequence is something happened against our wishes. There's this confused ignorance. So this confused ignorance, it's not the usual word translated as ignorance, but a word that are translated as confused ignorance because it's a not knowing something. So it's nothing to do with reality, as in emptiness, but it's about not knowing. Then we have the mind gets disturbed and anger arises. So that's the sequence presented. So to talk now about this confused ignorance. So what it means in this context, because in other contexts this word is used for example, not knowing what to do and what is virtuous and should be engaged in and what's non-virtuous and should be avoided. That not knowing is this confused ignorance. So what it means here is that one is not using one's wisdom, or better translated here, one's intelligence. One is not using one's intelligence, and therefore the mind gets disturbed. So this confused ignorance is a mind that is not that is unintelligent. It's not necessarily doing anything, but it's rather to mark the fact that at this crucial point where things are going against our wishes and the mind is liable to get disturbed and therefore angry, we are not using our intelligence. This is the role here of confused ignorance. It's not understanding, it's not using the intelligence, really. So now to hopefully make it clearer with an example. You have a particular wish for things to go in a certain way, and maybe someone with authority comes and says, no, it's going to be in a different way. And from that, you get annoyed with them. So immediately, a skilled practitioner will have challenged this confused ignorance by having trained their mind to develop their intelligence or their wisdom, but intelligence is better here. Develop their intelligence. So as soon as the mind recognizes, oh, something unwanted has happened. This person has told me not to do something that I want to do, for example. So something unwanted has happened. If one's mind is well trained, immediately intelligence will kick in and we'll remind ourselves, this person only wants to be happy. Therefore, they are saying, don't do this, rather do that. That's their sole motivation. They are not meaning to interrupt my plans or to obstruct me. Even if they know what I want to do, and they are knowingly obstructing me, their underlying motivation is a wish for happiness. This is really what's propelling them. And understanding, well, my wishes being fulfilled, their wishes being fulfilled, at that level, there is no difference. They want to be happy, I want to be happy. Thinking like this would calm us down immediately, and the mind wouldn't get disturbed, and anger wouldn't arise. So this is how this is a method, again, the fourth line, in a wide variety of ways. So this is a method or a way, a manner, in which one trains one's mind so that we rely on our intelligence to recognize when things are going against our wishes. Now there's a grave possibility that anger may arise. I need to apply a countermeasure, and you use your intelligence and do so. So this is one further example. There are still 132 verses to come, which will present many, many more techniques or methods to cultivate in your mind, train your mind in to deal with the life's challenges and thereby cultivate patience.
소식이 되바디 다제 되바디 키멜레마나 콘라이데 그 미디바지바디 그가 미디오 좀자 가래라네 네 되바디 네 시교디 그 녀마 소세즈마도 요마 김세디마도 요마 세상 네 시교디 되바디 그 마냐나 나 마가 지워도 그랬으면 나서 랑지진 숙체비 디긴이다 랑 나서 네세 네 랑지진 요바자 네 시교디 그 녀마소 세드네 주 미임이 되어게 디네 코로나 기고로 제사디 네 시교디 녀나 양국으로 고 말에 세데 다걸 양국이 김전 가래 하나 마고 만년에 켜 코로나 거 이미대 껴고 김전 가래 인지미지 코로나 시교디 양국으로 고 말에 란나 안두치 시력이 진주지요네 신의 양국에서 말로 코로나 되버려 봐 같이 돼 냐나마 예미 코로나 라와이 봐 되버려 봐다 제사 아니 이 결혼 시기에 파냐 인지미지 양국이나 아니 결혼을 되면 매겨도 파셔지 결혼을 시에는 결혼 얘기를 베스 니 만년에 지기를 베스 수수 삼다베나 근데 하나 되면은 양국가 김제 민도 남나 아니 지바로 코로나 되면은 결혼 시기에 양국요 말 와데 저는 두 삼다도 제가 제바나 이 미대와 얘기 김제 코로나 말다데 제바 마시바지 뭐바 말이바 나세 랑 지진기 원기 다 이미대와지 될레테네 콘로게 대리 콘로 원게 랑 마지바 샤마지바 아니 동아야데 세상 도신 세상 저기 녀모바 제와지 탈토네 뭐바 말이바 랑 지진이 다스 말이발로 투바레세데 두 삼단 제바 있나 먼저 로로지 라바라바제 하고 두그래.
So to counteract this confused ignorance, one needs to use one's intelligence, and this means using reasons. So one can recognize that this person now is saying or doing something contrary to how I would like things to go. So therefore, I would need to now apply my intelligence. Otherwise, I'm liable to get upset. So perhaps this person has no idea what my wishes are. They perhaps have no idea they are going against my wishes. Quite possible. Or perhaps they do know, but they have specific reasons that I'm unaware of for going against my wishes. Entirely possible. There is no need for anger. So immediately in this way, using one's intelligence, one prevents the rise of anger and can rather have a discussion with the person. Moreover, if you notice your mind is now angry, you can also, if you've done the prior training, use other reasons. This anger has arisen because this person has said or done something contrary to my wishes. Therefore, this anger is an expression of my self-cherishing, wanting things to go my way, putting my wishes first and foremost and ignoring the wishes of the other person. So if one's done a good training before, immediately recognizing one's self-cherishing and knowing the faults of this, that will be enough to pacify your mind, to calm your mind, and lead you back to where you should be and have a discussion with this person, calm and rational discussion with a mind that's patient, that's undisturbed. Or a further antidote or technique that can be applied here, if one is trained, is to recognize that if this person, all they've done is gone against my wishes. This expression of anger that's arisen, this anger that has arisen is an expression of my ignorance of self-grasping. I'm grasping at myself strongly because I'm grasping at my wishes strongly, the I and the mine. And again, if one has reflected well on the I and the mine, that will serve to dissipate one's disturbed mind. So here, one can use more simple reasons, such as that this person, maybe they have no idea what my wishes are, or maybe they do, but they have reasons. No need to get angry, let's have a talk. Or one can use deeper reasoning through recognizing anger as an expression of self-cherishing or of the ignorance of self-grasping. And that too will serve to calm the mind, and thereby one can have a conversation. So these then are further reasons, or amongst the wide variety of ways, these are further ways that one can employ.
Do samdang as a contract, that do some dire contract and ski do some big samda, contra the immediately do, immediately can ski was the rangi debat miduba, the debat mutum bali and the key do, and the debat mutum but the debat mutuna that immediately hore go mare, as if you give samda, Yogona, Garcin Yore, then you give some two chebache, 어느 어다 이미터 기호 김선 통고 말에 재산 김선 매발에 김선 마통 봐서 이미터와 기게 말 마기와 팽기래 디네서다 이미터 기미도 기미도 네 콘트 미기와도 용거와 재산이 콘트 기야래 원고 셔야 아주 진짜 삼다야네도 삼다 안디 콘트 기미도 선배 삼다들이 안디네 야 다 콘트니만 아주 시셔 콘트게 소슬이야 미가비게다 제디 삼로디 슈첨보라지 예대베이네야 아 치수 아주 삼드는 콜 가르치는 콘트게 봐래 콘트게 그 가능스케샤선베 다 소수기라 콜미비 콘트 가르치셔서 소수의 이미대와 계셔 이미대와데 가능케셔서 코다 되바 미팅바랑 되바 미팅바디 코에제바자 기도와 되니 제베나 코에 미디어바디 미팅바디 코에제베나 아인지메지 콜이야 nga semma kiwa chago yumja kares tu cheba che tu chen samta weina ane nyama ge khonzane semma kiwa yebane phashi shiya yungure ane dene samta weina ane khonros ne imite ge ala ngonggo chaya da nyama ge ne semma kiwa yebane ma shiya dige dene yongtuguro dene za do na nyingbo de nga zo ngui ni sudi 마시바 말이 마시베 원기 아니 용거래 디제바체 누 제바체 탈도 무인이스 시 하고야도 되네 용거 말봐 되네 김자로 지 되는 차거와 대소 양 아주 콘도 깨고 김장 가래 깨네 가서 깨바래도 저는 삼다야디 예체머리도 함
When you engage in this meditation, the way I encourage you to do this meditation, as always, repetition over a sustained period is crucial, and do it in a forward and a reverse sequence. And in particular, when you're starting out, more of it will be theoretical because you need to get in meditation familiar with the sequence. So how does anger come about? And you think first, I encounter something either going against my wishes or not being in accordance with my wishes, so something unwanted. From that, I'm told I'm not thinking clearly about the situation, and thereafter I'm told my mind is getting agitated, and then anger of some form of strength arises. So that's the sequence, and then you just remind yourself of the sequence. Then you think of an incident, a time when you got frustrated, annoyed, or angry. So now you go in reverse. You see that you're angry. You remember the time you're angry. You'll immediately remember the reason. And so, okay, there's the angry mind. I'm told this was preceded by a disturbed mental state, and that was preceded by this confused ignorance. So, and then prior to that, I encountered something that was said or done that I disliked. So the confused ignorance, let's put some energy there, because the antidote to that is using one's intelligence. How could I rather have thought in this particular instance? And using something from your life, maybe early in the day or this month or in the past. And you think to yourself, so this person, what they were expressing was, through words or action, their wish to be happy. That's the deep underlying motivation. My annoyance came because it was going against my own wishes for happiness. This is all. My wishes for happiness are no way superior to theirs. We all have the right to happiness. And that, immediately you're training yourself in an antidote. Moreover, this person, by impeding me or acting in a way I dislike, or talking in a way I disliked, perhaps they have no idea what my wishes were or what my likes or dislikes. So they weren't doing anything intentionally. And even if they were, they maybe had good reasons for that. And even if they didn't, still, their underlying wish was for happiness. The primary wish, the deep wish, wasn't to upset me. It was to achieve their own happiness. So in this way, we're introducing three different ways that we could think about, could use our intelligence to deal with such a situation. That they don't know what my wishes are, and even if they do, they may well have good reasons, and if they don't, well, the underlying wish is to be happy, not to harm me. So in this way, you have trained your mind in how to deal better with that same situation. Then you do it through many situations and do the same ones again and again to develop the skill. And if you've done a prior study and meditation on the ignorance of self-grasping and the self-cherishing mind, you use those two as antidotes to this confused ignorance. In other words, to the lack of thinking about a situation, coming to know a situation. And if you train like this well, you will, and repeatedly over a sustained period, you will be able to deal skillfully with similar situations in the future. The third verse. When the mind holds onto the pain of anger, the mind will never experience peace. Joy and happiness will not be reached, and unsettled sleep will not come.
다 shedan sumi sem chana sidi shen control sem le dunga sungu se sem le kanga jisan control keba no sosole sem ma keba dunga kanga shingurwa dene ge sem de control sem le mutu che du chen deba ina ane dunga sosige yi dunga yi shiwi ge shiwa yungu mares yi dunga yi shiwa di mena ane gawi ge 대화디 냠순용하지 용 말에 대화 용 말에 서로죠. 대수 디식니디게. 말에 디니.
Look at the first two lines. When the mind holds onto the pain of anger, the mind will never experience peace. When the mind is suffering, when it's in pain, such a mind that is in such a state can never be calm, can never be peaceful.
Dene ane semle dene gi kontro lang de ba ina da kontro lang che semle du che kontro ge den kontro lang de ba ina dene yi ga wa da lui de wa de yung ma re che le ya de yi ga wa yung ma re de wa lui de wa de me to blas ane di ma to ba ma che ane ni ko ba ne ni ya yung ma re ni mi wo shi ni hu ma re ane mi wo shi de me ge sem ane ko so re genji 가서 셈 행자 지금 내벽이 땜바디야 용 말에서 그 안티 셈 행자 대용하디에 땜바디 용 말에서 셈 행자 르르치 돼 지금 말하되 진짜 셈 교와 제 셈 행자 땜부 매와 되 교로로 하니 땜부 내도 말해서 셈 행자지 내가 용 말해서 원래
The third and fourth line present further faults of anger. Joy and happiness will not be reached, unsettled sleep will not come. Joy and happiness, so this refers to mental joy and physical happiness will not be reached. So in other words, whilst the mind is unhappy, whilst the mind is angry, one will not be experiencing mental joy, and it has a harmful impact on one's body too. Furthermore, so the way I've translated the words are fine, but the mind is unsettled and sleep will not come. So the mind being unsettled isn't necessarily what leads to sleep not coming. These are two further negative faults of anger. So one's sleep is impeded or impaired by being angry, and also one's mind's not stable. One's mind is unsettled by being disturbed by anger.
근데 나 컨트롤 균이 시고래 지상 컨트롤 돼 봐나 셈둥아 시와 용 말에스 지상 셈둥아 시와데 용 말에 지상 매번에 셈 이가위 가와뇨요 말에 아니 셈 가와면 셈 미디어와 셈 마기와 차도 디겐진의 룰레야 강아티기레스 아니 니고 말에스 나디나데 지시베네 안 칼라사나 심보에 조번에 님되나 기우메 용구로 하다 근데 니게 셈 땐차 벨링자리 용어야 말에스 니 컨트롤 균디네레스 지상 데네 인자 아니 컨트롤이 봐 데네게 마게 컨트롤이 마요야기 탑람 가래서는 쇠버 컴퓨터레스 제가 쇠버 공부하는 컨트롤이 말에 컨트롤 말해 봐나 아기면 내내게 동안 차상 하는 용 말에스 제가 이제서 쇠버 공부해야 되기 침벌에서 송거래.
So this verse points out further faults of anger. So the faults include that one, whilst angry, will experience no inner peace. One's mind will not be joyful at all, and therefore there's a negative, harmful impact on our body. Also, our sleep becomes disturbed. We cannot enjoy food, even if it's delicious, because of being upset. We will not even taste it as delicious. Or if we're eating with friends, we will not even enjoy their company. And furthermore, because the mind is unsettled, we will not be able to let go of the anger. The anger will continue to swirl around within us. So therefore, seeing these faults of anger, we need to develop patience.
아래 단달라 안주도 신의 심지어 콘도 가는 기기도 세배도 신의 심지어 제바체 다 콘도 계획 금전되게 마sam다 안지 심지어야야 제제 타마라 는 뭔가 맞이 말이 받을도 소수기 되고 뭐 받을 두려 받아 하고 그래 되네자 인자 안디 소수기 되고 말은 콘도 계획 보면은 금전sam다도 아니 고야매 받아 하고도 그래 제가 되네자 나제량 아주 콘도 나자 뇌샤 가래 개비나 내 차상 긴 유단 긴치래 되는지요. 디 가래 뇌샤를 마선 디 뇌샤데 가는 스키도 시베제 부두수 김데 타마달라 랑제징 삼들을 투용을다. 랑제징 삼로도 몽바 마릭바 차서도 디 제바치네 셰답기 제바이나 되네 도샤 개고에 김천 통말에 콘도 개고에 김천 통고 말에 나제 개고에 김천 통고 말에 세상에마 콘도 개와다 도샤 개와라서 중베네 되네 김천도 야야 삼도 안다말이야 하고도 오다디 네디 베노르 제샤선 베게 가브리엘야 소소 개마쇼고야 가브리엘야 모사게 오당이 베샤사 사샤 노르 침무제 제샤선 베 소소 교회에다 안에 지금 모사기워야다 안데네지 용거와 제가 되네자 김제스 제바자와 삼주기 침몰이도와 제나다 디마야를 탑람 카리데 쇠복 공부래 쇠복 공부에는 아니 판연된데 요된데 강아지 차사 용문도 와서도 제바제 되네 삼로 나라다 나중에 삼로를 와서 되네게 쇠비 삼로디 되네게 네 삼로디 공부에 개바인다디 라신이가 팬바라라 팬바시라 팬바 두 선배 삼로 통해도 되네 쇠복 공부야네 내게지나 슈체샤리아데 콘트 슈촌 줘야 아니 디체야데 용거로와 아데네 나데 대샤샤네.
To conclude then with a brief summary in what we've looked at tonight in these two verses. The summary is for you to meditate on, to take what's presented here, as well as what I presented at the end of the previous verse a few minutes ago in terms of how to meditate. So what I'll say now, put together with that. So we started out by talking about some of the faults of anger, that how it is a standout affliction amongst all the harmful afflictions. Anger really stands out from other afflictions, in that it serves to cause so much pain and harm to ourselves now and in lives to come, as well as to others. And it's including with the verse we looked at last week, it serves to overcome previously accumulated virtue, as well as leading to the accumulation of tremendous non-virtue in a way that makes it stand out from the other afflictions, as we looked at earlier tonight. Whereas and therefore, these faults that have been mentioned, as well as in this verse now about losing mental happiness, harming our bodies, and so forth, what we've seen in this third verse, these faults on anger need to be reflected on, not just accepted, yes, I know anger is bad, I don't want to be angry, but we need to develop this strength of mind that sees anger as never justified, never acceptable, and this ongoing determination that when it's arising, not to allow it to abide, not to tolerate it, not to ever see it as acceptable. So this is why it's imperative we reflect again and again on the faults of anger, so that in the future, when we are angry, when anger does arise, the virtuous factors of inner shame or embarrassment, if we've expressed it to others, arise and serve to help us to deal with anger again and to apply our training in patience again. And then furthermore, we looked at some of the benefits of being patient. And the key benefits of being patient, which means that when one deals with unwanted circumstances, one recognizes, unlike previously, my mind is undisturbed. I'm not finding what this person has just said to me, or what they are doing, or my physical pain. It's not disturbing me like it used to. And this recognition of the transformation that the training in patience brings leads to a deep confidence that I can do this. And this then serves to spur us on in all our spiritual endeavors, cultivating ethics, generosity, and so forth. And so this key benefit of confidence in training that comes from training in patience. So recognize that and use this to spur you to train in patience. Looking at the faults of anger, that too leads to spurring one to train in patience. How to train in patience, as mentioned in more detail a few segments before. Look at how anger arises, and in particular, see the sequence again and again, but in particular, train in the reasons given. Train in the reasons given so that one can counteract this confused ignorance that stands between the mind getting disturbed and meeting a potential source for our anger, usually what others say or do, or our thoughts, a train of thoughts. So you train then in the reasoning, and if you have prior training in reflecting on self-cherishing, it's excellent to recognize that our afflictions, particularly that of anger, are an expression of our self-cherishing. For example, attachment, I wanted to go this way, and that's an expression of self-cherishing. And when it doesn't, anger arises. This is too arising from our self-cherishing. If you come to see the faults of self-cherishing, this will spur you to turn away from anger and to embrace patience. Okay, thank you. Then we can conclude there for tonight. Thank you very much.